Hey everybody, and welcome to RPG Horror Stories from Reddit with D&D Doge. In today's episode, we have a story about a player that wants to retire his character, but decides to take another one with him. A story about a player character forced to take fantasy drugs, and more. So, without further ado, let's get right into the cringe. They got my barbarian high more than once, and made him useless for about 3 to 4 sessions. By Reddit user, Writing Throwaway 707. This story starts off at a high school D&D club, in a group made up of my close friends, who also enjoy D&D. I don't think there was a specific problem player, but an issue with continuing to do the problem. The cast of characters is this, using their class names for convenience. Me, a tiefling barbarian. I've had this character for 5 years, and finally got to start playing him at the beginning of December. Monk, a shifter drunken master monk. She just switched characters in the most recent session, but this story is about the old character and not the new one. Artificer, a human bladesmith artificer. Our team dad. King Julian, a homebrew lemur man ranger, played by a friend. And our DM. We have a cleric and a sorcerer too, but they're not as important to the story. I gotta preface this story with the fact that all of us are still in high school, and that all of us have been playing for a hot minute. Going to also repeat that I have absolutely zero hard feelings towards any of them, and more so to the fact that this issue was expanded longer than it should have. But I digress. You're here for the RPG cautionary tale. I want to say about 5 or 6 sessions in, me and Monk had just finished a sparring match. My character won, and both retired to their rooms after a deep conversation about life. The following session started with the next morning, and the party met in the cafeteria area of their base of operations. My barbarian was in a bit of pain after being knocked to less than half HP, and the monk, who I need to repeat is a drunken master monk, but flavored to be hardcore drugs instead of alcohol, offers me a gray pill painkiller. I don't really want to take it, but my character would because I figured it would be almost like a health potion. Though it turns out that the monk gave my barbarian fantasy PCP. Damn, that got turned up to an 11 real quick. I was shocked too much to say what I was really thinking, and our DM flipped a coin and rolled a d6. He then said that my barbarian had a bad trip for a 6-hour in-game high. I could roll with that, as I figured there would be a time skip. But that's where the worst part comes in. The pacing in this particular campaign is so effing slow sometimes, and this 6 hours expanded to at least 2 sessions, maybe 2.5 tops. Each session had a week or 2 in between, depending on if the D&D club supervisor is at school. So that means we had to wait a whole week out of game before we could even get him down. This bad trip that my barbarian went through basically dropped him down to just bare bone stats and feats. I couldn't do anything useful because of the in-game panic that he was in due to the hallucinogenic drugs that he was on. The only good thing that came out of that first high was that it solidified our artificer as the party dad, and gave the first glimpse of my character's backstory through a hallucination. Now we skip to the second most recent session, the one before the most recent one I played on Friday. That was session 11. My character finds a near-death artificer. He was literally rolling saves the second the session opened, because he had gotten into a fight with Monk for lore reasons. We were missing our cleric and sorcerer, temporarily, so King Julian was filling in. We give a health potion to the artificer, and my barbarian takes him back to his childhood home that we were staying at. When my barbarian comes back, the monk has given King Julian PCP, and that made me literally go, "Oh no, not again," out loud. The lemur man was high, but luckily got a good high. But then, he shot my barbarian in the ear with a piece of gold. Because my barbarian was in pain, and got knocked to a little over half HP again, the two tried to offer my barbarian PCP again. I said that I didn't want to, but those two and the DM told me that I had to roll insight against both of their high-ass persuasion rolls. So my barbarian was, by the fate of the dice, convinced to take PCP, even though he in-game knew that it was going to end badly. The same rolls were made, and he got stuck with another long bad trip. King Julian dies, as we have this thing where when he needs to fill in for a missing player or two, he appears in-game and then dies when he's not needed, only to be revived when he's needed again. And Monk runs to complete their combat mission. So now, to my dismay, my barbarian feels weak and scared again. And then, the now healed artificer and my boyfriend, the sorcerer, come to find my barbarian high and lost in the forest that he should know because it was his childhood home. A quick reminder that I didn't want my barbarian to be high, but was stuck having to play him that way. Because he was high, my barbarian saw artificer and sorcerer as hostile and almost was made to induce a PvP, if it wasn't for a dancing light spell from sorcerer working like calm emotions. They took the high barbarian back to his childhood home and tried to get him to rest, and then the session ended. Now, the most recent session, literally 2 days ago on Friday the 12th, I started with my character high and had to ask the DM to just let it be over so we wouldn't hold back plot progression anymore. I'm glad he said yes, because I didn't want another session and a half of, "Oh, the barbarian is too scared to do anything, right? Because he's high." So at least he came down and was able to continue the plot, even if there was a slight hangover. So I guess this isn't a full horror story, and ended on a bittersweet note. But please, take my advice before making another player's character high. Ask them. Maybe even let them decide how long or how severe it will be. Because if they failed the roll, they should at least be allowed to have it last as long as they see fit. It sucks to drag the party back due to your character getting high or drunk when you don't want them to be. I know I could have done more to lessen this, but it's all said and done, and I don't have any hard feelings about it anymore. And on a more positive ending, our party dynamic is still very strong, and after a small conversation, we probably won't have it happen again, especially now that Monk decided to play a different character, a Bard Warlock multiclass, that she was more interested in using. If you made it all the way through, thanks. I might keep this throwaway for other stories, since I'm in a couple other groups on top of this one. But I hope that they won't need to be posted in this subreddit. I agree with OP that the first time it happened, it had to suck having to play their character like that. And sure, that in-game 6 hours took a good bit of out-of-game time to pass, but that is just the way things fall sometimes in tabletop RPGs. And at least the DM saw fit to have this be a way to drop some of the character's backstory. But for the DM to then make OP's character take it again, when the player didn't want to, and the character even knew better, is BS. Persuasion is not mind control, and if the character adamantly did not want to take it, then there should not have been a roll in the first place. Though, at least it sounds like everyone talked it out after that, and OP won't have to deal with that happening again. Let's move on. But before we do, I think it's time for a kitty intermission. Ah, there we go. Now, I would fetch to say that that is much better than fantasy drugs. Maybe. But anyhow, let's get into the next one. First and last session. By Reddit user, Rainbow Glasses Are My Jam. This is fresh. I joined a new Discord server to find a game. I post my info in looking for games, and specifically state 5e only. Rules also state gameplay must be 3rd or 5th. Shortly after posting, I get a message that there's a game. The first red flag. He doesn't tell me until I agree to join that the RP system is GURPS. Second, he denies more character backgrounds than he approves. So the first session starts 15 minutes early. Annoying, but fine. My character, male, is introduced about 30 minutes in. My character is dead by unfightable BBEG 30 minutes later. I spend an hour creating a new character. This time, it's a female, and the BBEG tries to kill her too at first, but then decides that he'll let her live if she agrees to marry him and have his child. She gets a day to think about it. While this is happening, a new player joins. She derails everything, always about sex. It gets to a point where she and a more veteran character are basically sexting in the general chat while we try to continue role-playing. Then, the next day, I was asked to join a campaign with the same group that runs parallel to the current. I said no. Then the GM and another player start messaging me, trying to get me to change my mind. No means no. Maybe not a horror story, just tons of red flags. But my first session was my last. Well, that certainly was a straight-to-the-point list of red flags. Though I am a bit confused. OP stated that they wanted 5e, but still stayed after they found out that the game was GURPS. Sure, all the stuff that happened was red flags, like the bit with the BBEG wanting their character to have their child, which of course would pop up again in one of these stories, and the player that was sex-obsessed. But OP should have left after they found out that the system wasn't what they wanted, or even when the GM wouldn't tell them what the system was right away. But it sounds to me like OP would think twice in joining a game like this again, and I don't blame them for flat out saying no when being asked to join another game with this group. Let's move on. My character was murdered because another player got bored. By Reddit user Naxi24. I used to play in a lot of text-based RPGs on a forum, where all the players were characters in a historical setting, managing a real country down an alternate historical timeline. And this was one of the dumber moments I had to deal with. So I made a common blunder, and made a character in one of these games that I did not really figure out what to do with this particular one being set in France in the 1800s. I kind of just had him floundering about, trying different things, and seeing what stuck and what was fun, and making a lot of mistakes along the way. Now, another player, who was playing a super rich noble, offered my character a ton of money to marry his mistress, who was a historical figure that was notorious for getting around. I accepted, because good money. Yes, I did not really think this through, so my bad. And I got some nice influence points. Now, at the same time, another player, who was also struggling with his character, who had the same issues as mine, as he didn't really have a direction for his character, started to get bored with said character. He never really engaged much with the game, besides making small posts and small quips. Now, the reasonable thing to do in this situation is to calmly retire the character in a post and make up a new one. But he did not do that, and decided to engage in a little bit of griefing. Now, before I continue, I want to make this clear. At the time, this player hated my guts. He felt like I was a dumbass player, and had a habit of constantly yelling at me in text chats about how I was stupid and that I needed to just leave the group permanently. This wasn't a friend being a troll in good fun. This was a dude who wanted to be petty and figured that I had put myself in a great position to be griefed. Which, to be fair, I did. So, with full DM approval, this player's character started an affair with my character's wife. Now, of course, this played out exactly as the situation in Europe in the 1800s would. I find out, tell the other player to back off, he tells me to get stuffed, and we got a duel on our hands. Now, right away, the other player made it clear that this was going to be a deathmatch, and that he was aiming to kill, and so I should be as well, or else I would die. So, in the game, we have the duel set up. The DM writes a big fluff piece about the situation, except the other player never really had intentions to actually do the duel. The DM then wrote a post about how the other player had actually gotten a group of guys together, and then I had to read about how they all beat my character to death. Mind you again, the DM approved of all of this, knowing that this was all done out of pettiness, and probably rolled to see if the other character succeeded in his assassination attempt. Now, the other character did fail to escape, and was executed by the state for murder, so at the end of it, both of our characters were dead. I asked him why the hell did he spend all that effort just to kill my character, and he responded, "'Cause now 2 useless characters are no longer making this game worse." By the way, I should mention this. The DM and the majority of the player base sided with this guy, thinking it was both the funniest thing in the world, and that it was all my fault for not thinking when having my character agree to certain things. So, that was fun. Anyway, I guess I sort of won out in the end, because with my following character, I actually had a path forward for them in what I wanted them to be, and ended up becoming very important in the game for a very long time. The griefer ended up quitting the game entirely after a while. TLDR, a player who hated me and got bored with their character decided to also retire my character with his. Yeah, that is a bit of a dick move for that player to sabotage OPs, and the DM isn't blameless either, since he facilitated the whole thing. At least it sounds like OP was able to have fun eventually with this forum. But I do have to question, why would you stay in a group where the DM pulled this with a player that was obviously doing it just to spite you as a player, and then with everyone else thinking that it was the funniest thing ever? If it were me, I would have probably dropped that group like a bad habit after that. Though, I do have to admit, the power of spite can be strong at times, and perhaps that is why OP decided to stay. I guess all's well that ends well though. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may your games remain horror story free. Until next time.